What if the war Russia expected to win through exhaustion is now destroying Russia itself? When Vladimir Putin launched what he called a special military operation, the plan was simple: strike fast, overwhelm Ukraine, and force a collapse. When that failed, the Kremlin switched to what Russia has relied on for centuries: attrition. Bleed the enemy dry, outlast them, grind them down. But something went terribly wrong. By the start of 2026, it's Russia, not Ukraine, that is showing the signs of exhaustion. 2025 was meant to be Moscow's decisive year. According to Ukrainian and Western assessments, the Kremlin set clear objectives: fully capture Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia, with eyes even on Odessa. Instead, Russia enters 2026 having achieved none of those war-ending goals. Even in Luhansk, the region closest to full occupation, Ukrainian forces are holding out. Russia can't secure the final sliver of territory it needs, and even if it did, Ukraine's strikes would continue. The front lines may move slowly, but the cost to Russia has been catastrophic. Ukraine's commander-in-chief, Oleksandr Syrsky, summed it up bluntly: Russia planned to end the war by force. Ukraine stopped it, again and again, forcing Moscow to delay operations and abandon breakthroughs. Yes, Russia gained ground in 2025, but the price was staggering. Independent estimates suggest the Kremlin committed up to 700,000 troops last year alone. With armored losses mounting, over 1,100 tanks and nearly 24,000 armored vehicles destroyed, Russia shifted tactics, sending infantry forward in smaller units. Many never came back. The result? Roughly 5,000 square kilometers gained, less than 1% of Ukraine's territory, at the cost of over 400,000 Russian casualties in a single year. Put another way, Russia burned through almost 500,000 soldiers to make gains so small they would take decades, if not centuries, to finish the job. And the losses weren't just on paper. British intelligence and Ukrainian data point to a brutal reality. Ukraine's FPV drones, most of them domestically produced, are now responsible for more than half of Russian battlefield casualties. Soldiers advance on foot, only to be detected, tracked, and eliminated from the air. Even conservative counts tell a grim story. BBC analysis of obituaries in cemeteries suggests between 240,000 and 350,000 Russian soldiers have been killed since the invasion began, and that may still underestimate the true toll. Here's where the story takes a decisive turn. Attrition was supposed to favor Russia. Moscow assumed it could trade lives for land indefinitely, but Ukraine flipped the equation. In 2025, Ukraine not only held the line, it reduced its own casualties by 13%, even as Russia launched its largest offensives of the war. Entire Russian army-sized formations were thrown at single cities like Pokrovsk, yet Ukrainian losses went down, not up. Why? Because Ukraine stopped playing Russia's game. Instead of costly maneuver offensives, Kyiv built defense in depth: layered fortifications, drone saturation, precision strikes, and constant rotation of forces. Russia advanced into kill zones, not breakthroughs. Military analysts warned Russia about this years ago. Ukraine listened, Russia didn't. And the damage isn't limited to the battlefield. Ukraine's long-range strikes on oil facilities, logistics hubs, and industrial sites are draining Russia's war chest. Oil and gas revenue is down sharply. Inflation remains high. Half of Russia's sovereign wealth fund is gone. Growth has slowed to a crawl. Meanwhile, Ukraine, despite its own economic strain, has secured long-term financial backing from Europe and the West. Russia has no such lifeline. This is the feedback loop now haunting the Kremlin. Lose soldiers and equipment, spend more to replace them, weaken the economy, lose even more on the battlefield. For the first time since the invasion began, Ukrainian commanders say something unprecedented is happening. Russia is losing troops faster than it can recruit them. That's the real turning point. Wars of attrition don't end with dramatic breakthroughs. They end when one side simply can't continue. And for the first time, all indicators suggest that side may be Russia. The strategy meant to crush Ukraine is now hollowing out Russia itself, economically, militarily, and demographically. And the longer this continues, the harder it becomes for Moscow to recover. But the manpower crisis is only one part of the collapse now facing Moscow. Russia's military problem is structural, not temporary. The Kremlin can still recruit, on paper, but the quality of those recruits has dropped sharply. Many are older, poorly trained, or pulled from economically desperate regions. Others are contract soldiers signing up for cash bonuses that now rival lifetime earnings in their home provinces. That may fill ranks briefly, but it does nothing to replace the experienced soldiers Russia has already lost. And experience matters. Ukraine has steadily improved how it fights, while Russia has steadily lowered its standards just to keep units staffed. The result is a widening effectiveness gap. Russian forces often advance without coordination, without air cover, and without reliable logistics, conditions that make them perfect targets for Ukrainian drones and artillery. This erosion is especially visible in Russia's officer corps. Junior and mid-level commanders have been killed at disproportionate rates, forcing Moscow to accelerate promotions and recycle leaders who should never have held those positions in the first place. That weakens command and control, slows decision-making, and increases battlefield chaos. In wars of attrition, chaos is fatal. Nowhere is this clearer than in Russia's equipment situation. While Moscow still boasts massive stockpiles, much of that hardware belongs to a different era. Tanks pulled from long-term storage are often missing critical components, lack modern protection, and are vulnerable the moment they reach the front. Vehicles once designed to spearhead breakthroughs are now being used as mobile coffins. Ukraine, meanwhile, has adapted faster than almost anyone predicted. Its drone production isn't just about numbers, it's about integration. Surveillance drones spot targets. FPV drones strike them. Artillery finishes what remains. This layered kill chain allows Ukraine to destroy far more Russian equipment than it spends, flipping the cost equation entirely. And that cost equation may be the most dangerous development for Russia of all. Historically, Russia could absorb losses because its economy, population, and industrial base were vast. But this war is exposing the limits of that assumption. Sanctions have restricted access to advanced components. Domestic factories struggle with labor shortages, and every destroyed vehicle now takes longer and costs more to replace. The Kremlin's solution has been to spend heavily. Military expenditures are swallowing Russia's budget, crowding out civilian needs. Infrastructure projects are stalled, social spending is squeezed, regional governments are under strain. And to cover the gap, Moscow is raising taxes and pushing state banks to finance the war indirectly. That creates political risk. So far, the Kremlin has managed dissent through repression and propaganda. But economic pain is harder to suppress than political opposition. When inflation stays high, wages lag, and young men keep disappearing into the military, pressure builds quietly, but relentlessly. This is where Ukraine's strategy becomes especially dangerous for Putin. Ukraine doesn't need a dramatic breakthrough. It doesn't need to march on Moscow. It only needs to hold, bleed, and outlast. Every month the war continues under current conditions, Russia gets weaker relative to Ukraine, not stronger, and Russia knows it. That's why Moscow keeps launching costly offensives despite minimal gains. It's not because the strategy is working, it's because the alternatives are worse. If Russia pauses, Ukraine fortifies further. If Russia escalates, losses spike. If Russia withdraws, the political consequences at home could be severe. It's a trap of the Kremlin's own making. The longer Russia remains committed to this war, the more it locks itself into a cycle it can't easily escape. Demographically, the country is bleeding working-age men. Militarily, it's losing modern equipment faster than it can rebuild. Economically, it's burning reserves with no clear endpoint. Ukraine, by contrast, is fighting a war designed for endurance. Western support allows Kyiv to stabilize its finances. Domestic drone production reduces reliance on foreign weapons. Defensive warfare minimizes casualties. And crucially, Ukraine is learning faster than Russia is adapting. That learning advantage compounds over time. Every failed Russian assault teaches Ukraine how to stop the next one more efficiently. Every destroyed unit reduces Russia's ability to mass force again. Every delay strengthens Ukrainian defenses further west. This is why analysts increasingly describe Russia as being strategically hollowed out. The state still functions. The army still fights. But the reserves, human, economic, and industrial, that once made Russia formidable, are being drained at a rate that is historically unsustainable. Empires rarely collapse in a single moment. They weaken gradually, then suddenly. Right now, Russia is in the gradual phase. Whether the Kremlin admits it or not, the war it believed would restore its power has instead exposed its vulnerabilities to the world. And unlike past conflicts, this one offers no easy exit. Ukraine has learned how to survive Russia's strength. Russia is now learning, too late, the cost of underestimating Ukraine's resilience. And that may be the most consequential lesson of the entire war. There is another layer to this conflict that often goes unnoticed, but it may shape Russia's future more than battlefield losses ever could: demographics. Russia entered this war already facing a long-term population crisis. Birth rates were falling, the workforce was shrinking, entire regions were aging faster than they could replace themselves. The war accelerated all of it. Hundreds of thousands of men in their prime working years are now dead, wounded, or permanently removed from the economy. And unlike equipment, people cannot be rebuilt on an assembly line. Ukraine understands this imbalance and is exploiting it deliberately. The focus is not on dramatic advances, but on systematically targeting the kinds of Russian units that take the longest to replace: trained infantry, drone operators, engineers, and junior officers. Every loss in these categories forces Russia to dig deeper into its remaining human reserves, lowering quality even further. The result is a dangerous feedback loop. Lower quality troops require more supervision. More supervision puts commanders closer to the front. Commanders die at higher rates. Coordination collapses. Casualties rise again. This is not theoretical. It's visible in how Russian operations increasingly stall after initial contact. Units advance, take losses, freeze, and wait, sometimes for days, for replacements or orders that never come. Ukraine, meanwhile, has embraced a model of warfare designed around sustainability. Smaller, more flexible units, heavy reliance on drones, constant intelligence feedback, and a command structure that allows decisions to be made quickly at the front, instead of waiting for approval from faraway headquarters. That speed matters. Modern warfare punishes hesitation, and Russia hesitates more now than at any point since the invasion began. Another critical weakness is logistics. Russia's supply network has been stretched thin by the sheer scale of its losses and the constant need to resupply active fronts. Ukrainian strikes on depots, rail hubs, and fuel infrastructure have forced Moscow to move supplies farther from the front lines, increasing delivery times and costs. Every extra kilometer matters. Fuel shortages limit armored movements. Ammunition delays slow offensives. Food and medical supply gaps crush morale. Soldiers who feel abandoned fight differently, or stop fighting altogether. Morale, once broken, is extremely difficult to restore. This is where the war shifts from numbers to psychology. Russian soldiers are increasingly aware of the odds they face. They see drone footage, they hear casualty reports, they know units sent forward are often not rotated back. That awareness erodes discipline and increases desertion, refusal orders, and passive resistance. Ukraine doesn't need propaganda to make this happen. Reality does it on its own. The Kremlin's response has been predictable: harsher punishments, tighter control, and louder rhetoric. But fear only works for so long. Once soldiers believe survival is unlikely regardless of obedience, control weakens rapidly. And all of this feeds into a larger strategic dilemma. Russia cannot escalate easily without risking wider consequences. Mobilization on a larger scale would strain society further and risk public backlash. Expanding strikes beyond Ukraine risks provoking deeper Western involvement, but scaling back would signal weakness, both at home and abroad. So Russia continues forward, trapped between bad options. Ukraine's strategy thrives in this environment. Every month without a decisive Russian breakthrough is a Ukrainian victory. Time strengthens Kiev's defenses, improves its technology, and tightens the economic screws on Moscow. Even if territorial lines barely move, the balance underneath them is shifting. This is why comparisons to past wars often fail. This conflict isn't being decided by dramatic offensives or single battles. It's being decided by which system, political, military, and economic, can endure longer under pressure. And right now, Russia's system is cracking. The warning signs are subtle but unmistakable. Emergency budget adjustments, rushed equipment refurbishments, declining recruitment quality, and a growing reliance on coercion rather than motivation. Ukraine, despite immense hardship, is moving in the opposite direction. Its military is becoming leaner, smarter, and more efficient. Its economy, though damaged, is stabilized by external support, and its strategic goals are clear and achievable. Hold the line, inflict losses, outlast the aggressor. This is how wars of attrition end, not with surrender ceremonies, but with one side quietly realizing it can no longer continue at the same pace. If current trends hold, Russia may still fight for years, but it will do so as a progressively weaker force, one that spends more to gain less, loses more to achieve the same results, and struggles increasingly to justify the cost. Ukraine doesn't need to destroy Russia outright. It only needs to keep letting Russia destroy itself. and that may already be happening. There is also an international dimension to this attritional shift that Russia cannot ignore. Moscow entered the war assuming that global fatigue would eventually weaken support for Ukraine. That calculation is increasingly proving incorrect. While debates continue in Western capitals, the overall trajectory of support has remained stable, and in some areas, it has deepened. For Russia, this is a strategic nightmare. Ukraine's allies don't need to match Russia, soldier for soldier. They only need to ensure that Ukraine's defensive capabilities remain intact. Every shipment of air defenses, artillery shells, intelligence support, or financial aid extends Ukraine's ability to impose costs on Russia. And unlike Russia, Ukraine does not bear those costs alone. This asymmetry matters enormously. Russia is funding its war largely by itself, under sanctions, with limited access to global capital markets. Ukraine is fighting with a coalition behind it. The difference becomes more pronounced over time, not less. Another pressure point is Russia's defense industry itself. Factories are operating at high capacity, but they are doing so under severe constraints. Skilled labor shortages, restricted access to advanced electronics, and reliance on substitute components have reduced both quality and output. Equipment is being produced, but not at the level or reliability required to offset ongoing losses. In practical terms, that means Russia is increasingly forced to prioritize quantity over capability. Older systems are refurbished instead of replaced. New units are deployed with uneven training and incomplete equipment. Maintenance cycles are shortened, leading to higher failure rates in the field. These compromises accumulate, degrading combat effectiveness in ways that don't show up immediately on maps, but become decisive over time. Ukraine's forces are acutely aware of this and adapt accordingly. They avoid direct confrontations when unnecessary, strike logistics and command nodes, and force Russian units to operate under constant pressure. The objective is not to defeat Russia everywhere at once, but to deny it the ability to concentrate power anywhere. That denial strategy is working. Russian offensives now struggle to achieve surprise. Ukrainian intelligence, supported by drones and Western ISR capabilities, detects troop movements early. Preparations that once enabled breakthroughs now telegraph attacks days in advance. By the time Russian units advance, Ukraine is already waiting, and waiting favors the defender. Another factor shaping the war's trajectory is institutional learning, or the lack of it. Ukraine has shown a willingness to adapt doctrine, rotate leadership, and discard ineffective approaches. Russia has been far slower to do the same. Centralized decision-making, fear of reporting failures, and political interference all slow adaptation. That rigidity is costly. Mistakes repeat. Failed tactics return under new names. Units are reassigned without addressing underlying problems. Over time, this creates a military culture that absorbs losses instead of learning from them. Wars punish that behavior relentlessly. As months turn into years, the consequences extend beyond the battlefield. Russia's long-term economic prospects are being reshaped by the war. Investment is scarce. Innovation is constrained. Entire sectors are redirected toward military production at the expense of civilian growth. Even if fighting stopped tomorrow, recovery would be slow and uneven. Ukraine, for all its destruction, has a clearer path forward. Reconstruction funding, integration with European markets, and technological acceleration through wartime innovation all offer post-war potential. Russia's outlook is far murkier. This contrast reinforces a key reality. Time is no longer Russia's ally. Attritional wars reward efficiency, adaptability, and resilience. Ukraine has built its strategy around those principles. Russia has relied on mass and endurance, but mass without sustainability becomes a liability. The longer the conflict continues along its current trajectory, the more the gap widens. And that leads to a sobering conclusion. Russia is not on the verge of sudden collapse, but it is being reshaped slowly, steadily, and painfully by a war it cannot easily win and cannot easily leave. Each passing month extracts a price that compounds across generations. Ukraine's goal is not immediate victory, it is strategic survival. And in wars like this, survival often decides everything. What we are witnessing is not just a battle over territory. It is a test of systems, priorities, and endurance. And right now, Ukraine's system is holding, while Russia's is grinding itself down. That may not end the war tomorrow, but it defines how the war will eventually end.